about marriage, right? So they would go to this course, and it was a really good course. Professor Gord taught it at SBC, and I forget most of it, but I remember one thing. We were given one assignment in that class, and the assignment was that you had to go find someone that you know who's been married 40 years or more. So you had to find someone who's been married 40 years or more. When I was given that assignment, and you had to have coffee with them. I think there's a requirement on how long you had to have coffee with them. It was like 1 or 2 hours or something. And they gave you questions that you could ask. But they said, probably you won't have to ask a lot of questions. They'll just tell you stories once you get them going. And it's true. If you start talking to people about their marriages, like they can just tell stories all day long, right? So there, in our church, there were 3 couples that qualified for this coffee time at the time. And so the first 2 said yes, and I was like, yep. I went and interviewed John and Katie Harms. And I had just an incredible visit with them. I sat down in their house here. I guess it's the Reimer house now. But I sat down with John and Katie, and it's amazing when you start talking about marriage how people are humbled. You know, like when and my little intro, when I talk about marriage and even just being on this topic, I'm humbled because I know when I think of my marriage, I think of a lot of ways in which I fall short. And when I sat down with John and Katie, I was amazed at this this couple who'd been married. I don't know how long they had been married at that point, but they were just incredibly humbled. You know, like they were humbled to speak with me and share their wisdom. And I'm like, man, that's kind of cool. It was unexpected for me. I thought they would just like talk to me with this confidence, like you need to do this, and then you'll have this. But it wasn't that attitude at all. It was like this humility. And I left there and I'm just like, man, that was cool. They talked about their hard times. I remember Katie talking about her first few years in marriage and living out to the farm and how hard that was, being alone in this house with kids. And you could tell as she was telling the story that she could remember it like it was yesterday, you know, but they were still there. And one thing that John and Katie said, I think one of the questions was, what's the secret to marriage? Like, if you could give me one secret, what was it? And they both said to have a good sense of humor. And I'm like, all right, I can do that, you know. But I think probably what they're saying was deeper than having just a good sense of humor, because I know lots of people with good senses of humor that I could not be married to. But I think it's more like they were saying, forgive each other, you know, like they were saying, like. And then I went and chatted with Ben and Catherine Bergen in Clearwater. I had a coffee with them, and they were funny. They were giggling like little kids. Like Ben Bergen was telling this story about I think a raccoon. Like somehow we got distracted, and he was talking about this raccoon that was eating from his bird feeder. So he had his pellet. I asked him why he had his gun in his kitchen, and it's because he was cracking the window open because in the middle of the night he was trying to catch this coon who was getting his bird feeder. And Catherine was just sitting there giggling at him, and I made 4 new friends after that assignment. And once we talked about some of that deep stuff about marriage, it's amazing how we just had this connection after that. But I remember going through that, just realizing that there was this amazing knowledge in those who had been married longer, obviously, than me. At the time I wasn't married, but just this feeling as I left there is that, man, these are some marriages that I want to emulate my marriage after. And then I got to write a paper about it, which was a fun paper to write. But I've got a few things from the book here is what is the point of marriage? I'm going to suggest there's at least 3 things, but 3 things I'm going to talk about today is that someone said it over here, is that marriage is for companionship. And I think one of the biggest points of marriage is just simple companionship. Ecclesiastes 4 verses 9 to 12 says, 2 are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up, but pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. So what is the purpose of marriage? The Bible's answer to this question starts with the principle that marriage is friendship. And if we go to back to the creation account, we have, so here is Adam, created by God and put into the Garden of Paradise, and yet his aloneness is not good. God sees Adam there, and he's like, this is not good. The Genesis narrative is implying that our intense relational capacity, created and given to us by God, was not fulfilled completely by our vertical relationship with him. God designed us to need these horizontal relationships with other human beings. And I find that just kind of fascinating, is like God makes this world, right? He creates Adam, it's all good, like, and he's like, no, it wasn't complete until God made Eve, and there was this companionship. There was something missing until there was this companionship, and then in that community, God said, okay, now we've got it. Now this is perfect. Now we're in the Garden of Eden. You know, it's Adam and Eve needed this companionship in their relationship with God. And another quote from the book here, I don't think I have it up there, but we should therefore not be surprised to find that all the money, comforts, and pleasures in the world, our efforts to recreate a paradise for ourselves, are unable to fulfill us like love can. This is confirmation of our intuition that family and relationships are a greater blessing and provide greater satisfaction than anything money can buy. And it's just this idea that, you know, when you get to your deathbed, or I'll stop talking about our deathbed eventually here, but when you get there one day, you know, you think about life and you're like, there's more to life than those pursuits that we pursue and money and all these things. It's really about our relationships, about our companionship. So marriage, the point of marriage is for companionship. And the Bible talks about it a lot. There is an amazing amount of verses that point towards the Bible, pointing towards our spouse as our friend in this friendship. Got another quote from the book here. The picture that the Bible draws of spiritual friendship is remarkable. Christian friendship is not simply about going to concerts together or enjoying the same sporting event. It is the deep oneness that develops as two people journey together toward the same destination, helping one another through the dangers and challenges along the way. When God brought the first man, his spouse, when he brought Adam, Eve, he brought him not just a lover, but this friend that his heart had been seeking. Proverbs 2:17 speaks of one spouse as an alep, a unique word that lexicons define as your special confidant or your best friend. In an age where women were often seen as the husband's property, and marriages were mainly business deals and transactions seeking to increase the family's social status and security, it was startling for the Bible to describe a spouse in this way, as a friend. But in today's society, with its emphasis, in our society, we emphasize romance and sex, and it's just as radical to insist that your spouse should be your best friend, though for a different reason. In tribal societies, romance doesn't matter as much as social status, and in individualistic Western societies, romance and great sex matter far more than anything else. The Bible, however, without ignoring responsibility to the community or the importance of romance, puts great emphasis on marriage's companionship. So the point of marriage is to have a companion. And I'll say this, I was talking to Clara about this a little bit, and I feel like I know a lot of marriages where they are married, they are lovers or spouses, and they aren't necessarily companions, you know. It's something where I guess I was surprised in my reading of this book and the Bible is that we are called to have best friends in our spouses. And when we're looking for a spouse, we are to look for a friend, like a companion, not just someone that gave us flowers on Valentine's. I know romance is good, but our societies really do elevate romance. I'm not trying to knock romance. We all need to be more romantic, probably. Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, we do. Okay. But I think there's something a lot more powerful to just companionship. Sometimes when I'm talking to youth about dating and stuff like that, I'm like, man, just find a friend and see where it goes. You know, like you don't have to stress out about this perfect love story, you know, about this guy doing the right thing and checking off all your boxes. Like, just how about you just be friends and see what happens, you know? And I think there's something a lot more deeper and profound to your spouse as a friend. And I was challenged in that. Me and Clara are friends sometimes, but sometimes we're not, you know? And sometimes we're roommates for sure. Like, we're stuck with each other, but, and we love each other. But I'm just saying, I really need to just stop going off my papers. But sometimes we are not friends, and we honestly need to get back to that. And it's awkward in the house some days because we fight and we're like, we're not friends, you know? We don't give ourselves the same grace that we give Joe Schmo off the street, you know? Like, we get away from that. I think there's something to this more than I've realized anyways, that the beautiful thing about marriage is you get this best friend, you know? And that's what it's for. The next thing, marriage is for sanctification. I think Dad told us this already, something like it. Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. You could say, so one spouse sharpens another. What then is marriage for? It is for helping each other to become our future glory selves, the new creations that God will eventually make us. Another quote from the book. This is Tim, I guess, quoting his wife, but he says, Kathy often says that most people, when they are looking for a spouse, are looking for a finished statue, when they should be looking for a wonderful block of marble, not so you can create the kind of person you want, but rather because you see what kind of person Jesus is making. I like this one too. One day we hope to hear God say, well done, thou good and faithful servants. You have lifted one another up to me. You have sacrificed for one another. You held each other up in prayer and thanksgiving. You confronted each other. You rebuked each other. You hugged each other. You loved each other. And now look at you. You're radiant. So marriage is for, the point of marriage, or a win in marriage, is sanctification. This is the part of marriage you don't look forward to. It's not the part like where we're like, man, I really want to get married so we can really buckle down on sanctification, you know, like it's not something, I don't hear it in a lot of young couples' wedding vows, or that they're looking forward to working on each other's sanctification. But it is an absolute necessary, and it is a win in marriage. I got another, is it up there? Yeah. Romance, sex, laughter, and plain fun are the byproducts of this process of sanctification, refinement, glorification. Those things are important, but they can't keep the marriage going through years and years of ordinary life. What keeps the marriage going is your commitment to your spouse's holiness, your commitment to his or her beauty, your commitment to his greatness and perfection. You're committed to her honesty and passion for the things of God. That's your job as a spouse. Any lesser goal than that, any smaller purpose, and you're just playing at being married. I'm like, ooh, that's a little bit of a gut check. Like, you don't have to say it that strong, buddy, but whatever. Sanctification. It's, I think sometimes I'll say this about my own marriage and sanctification is, sometimes we think when we fight or when marriage isn't going perfect or when these things happen that something must be wrong. I must have picked the wrong spouse, because it should just be easy, right? Marriage should just happen. There should be this connection, and we should just be able to do this marriage thing quite easily. You know, like that's kind of what when we're looking for marriage and when we're in marriage, we think, oh, there must be something wrong with the marriage. But sometimes I wonder if we're just missing like that God has just actually designed it to sanctify us, and that those problems are like the best times to grow. I have never grown very much when things are just going my way, you know? When things just go the way I plan, I don't grow very much. I grow when there's like a big problem, you know, that I need to figure out. When I look back at my marriage and all the times that we grew as a couple, it was always after a conflict. You know, it was always after a time where I was like, shoot, I think I married the wrong person, you know, or like, shoot, I don't know, fill in the blank. Well, you guys are so shocked, okay? Just quit. You have these thoughts, you know, and you're like, I'm just being honest with what's in your brain sometimes. And I I didn't marry the wrong person, okay? I married the right one. It's all good. But you have these thoughts, and maybe God's just sanctifying us. Maybe God is just giving you opportunities to grow in yourself. So marriage is for sanctification. And the last thing, before I focus on the youth, is marriage is for oneness. Genesis 2:24 says, "For this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." Right in the midst of patriarchal cultures, and in the face of these realities, God says, "I didn't put a parent and child in the garden. I put a husband and a wife. When you marry your spouse, that must supersede all other relationships, even the parental relationship. Your spouse and your marriage will be the number one priority in your life. When you marry, you commit to becoming a new decision-making unit and to developing new patterns and ways of doing things." And this is something I'm doing a decent amount of premarital counseling right now. There's one. There's two. Where's my third couple? They're not here. Anyways, I'm doing premarital counseling with a few couples, and it's something we talk a lot about is becoming one. It's this process. When you get married, the point of it is to become one flesh. You're no longer two people just living in the same. It's not like you just do it to become roommates. We become married to become one flesh, to become one unit. And it's that picture of Ecclesiastes where two are better of one in this cord of three strands, is we were made to be one person. And that goes to every aspect of life. I know we have boundaries in marriage, and I don't ride horse with Clara every time she rides, and she doesn't come with me to everything. I don't know. But we as a couple, our goal is to become one in everything we do. It's the way that God designed it, is to become one. And that doesn't just mean the act of getting married. It's this process of becoming one right through life. So that's the point of being married. That's pretty easy, eh? Go do it. We're done. No, I'm just kidding. I want to talk to the youth a little bit. I've got 5 minutes here. So I want to talk about getting ready for marriage. And I think as I talk about this is one part in Sunday school I just wanted to focus on the youth for a little bit. And I want to ask one question is, what age do you guys start getting ready for marriage? Like, when's the age where you're like, I'm getting ready? Any of you guys know? What do you think, Tyrell? Shrugging shoulders. Marne, when do you get ready? No? I'm going to keep picking on you till someone answers. Abby? Throw a number out. 18. Okay, that's what I was thinking you'd probably answer, right? You're like, I don't know. Every parent has a different maybe age for when they allow their kids to date and stuff, when they should start getting ready for marriage. I would say the age when you start getting ready for marriage is 7 years old. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just saying it is a young age. You actually start getting for marriage way younger than you think. I picked 7 because Tyson's 7. But the point of marriage is companionship, sanctification, oneness. So like if it's not like you all of a sudden turn this magical age and you start getting ready for marriage. You get ready for marriage at an incredibly young age. You can start working on your self-centeredness, your sanctification way younger. So this was a quote that Jeff mentioned last week that I want to repeat for getting ready for marriage. If two spouses each say, I'm going to treat my self-centeredness as the main problem in our marriage, you have the prospect of a truly great marriage. I found this quote to just be very true, not just in my own marriage, but when I see this in others. But the cool thing is that you can start on this. It's not like something you need to start only when you're getting ready for marriage. It's not like you have to wait for premarital counseling to get ready for marriage. It's not like you have to wait till you're 18 to start working on your self-centeredness. We can work on our self-centeredness right now. You can say, oh man, God's really showing me areas that I need to work on. Those will not magically go away. Those are things you need to give to God, work through with trusted family and friends. And the more you deal with your self-centeredness, the greater gift you give to your future spouse. And I changed the quote to this here. If a youth or young adult in Cornerstone Ministries Church says, I'm going to treat my self-centeredness as the main problem in my future marriage, you have the prospect of a truly great marriage. And again, this when I was talking with Clarissa about this class too, we were just thinking about like young people and we start to think, oh, are they? How do you know if you're going to have a good marriage or not? You know, like what's like the secret sauce to someone having a good marriage? Often we always think it's like the perfect. Oh, those two are just perfect for each other. You know, like all their character traits line up, their interests line up. They're going to have a good marriage. Or maybe we think, oh, those two kind of come from the same types of families, like they're going to have a good marriage. And when I think about people who are destined for a great marriage, it has very little to do with, I mean, it has some to do. Don't hear me say it has nothing to do with this. But it has less to do with the match and the story and the interests lining up. And it has a lot more to do with this. Like, I know some people, some youth or young adults where I'm like, man, they are really good at putting others before themselves. They're really good at not being self-centered, you know? Like they, even as a kid, they were just like, and I'm like, you have the recipe for a good marriage. When you can put the self-centeredness and those desires in ourselves aside and work on some of that stuff, that to me is like the best way to get ready for marriage. And when I see people coming up to marriage, it's always kind of like, hey, if you can, just deal with that, that's going to really, really help you in your marriage. Attack your self-centeredness like it's the biggest threat to your future marriage. I'm not a great matchmaker, but one thing I do know is when people do attack their self-centeredness, they will find a great match. And like I say, it does also have to do with the friendship and companionship. There's more to it than just not being self-centered, but that is a very good way to get ready for marriage. Another thing I want to say about getting ready for marriage, if you're young and you're looking forward to this one day, is probably the advice that I give the most is just to wait. Just hang on. I remember what it was like to be in grade 8 and I just had a crush on this girl and I wanted to be married. Sorry, Claire, I don't know. But I was like, just thinking of that day when I had a girlfriend, life would be good, you know, and I hear it all the time, and just that desire to like, man, once I have this, then that desire is fulfilled and life is going to be good. And that is a good desire, but I think we just need to remember to wait. Not the most fun words to hear, but just make sure you have an extra dose of patience in waiting for the man or woman that God has for you. Don't let it consume your thoughts, but trust God that He is going to lead you. And the last thing I want to tell you, youth, is one of the biggest questions I think we have in our youth years is like, who should I marry? How do I get ready for that? Who should I marry? And I think one thing I was thinking about is the list we have. I talked a little bit about it before. But I read a book, and he answers this question like this. The author's name is Jonathan Pokluda. He was at a young adults conference we went to last year. Some of you guys were there. You were, right? No? Mika? No? Yeah, anyways, he was a good speaker. I've been reading a lot of his books ever since. And one way he answers young adults that are getting ready for marriage, and they're asking, who should I marry? How do I know who to marry? He says he always answers it the same way. Marry the godliest person you know. A lot of people have lists, like I don't know if you guys had lists when you got married. Did you guys have lists? And your wife, spouse, or husband checked the list off? Heather, you didn't have a list? That's good. You don't need it. But some people talk about the list, and they're like, man, if my husband was a farmer, yes, I'm marrying him, because I want to do that. And everyone's saying no. But we've got some of these lists, and I think we put some of these things on our lists, and maybe we don't actually make lists, but in our brains we have these checklists where, man, my spouse needs to have this, or you dream of this, and some of those things are fine. A lot of those things are fine. We're attracted to certain people, and that's all good. But I think one thing that our list should really encompass is godliness. And I have a list here of what the Bible, this isn't all-encompassing, but lists of what you should look for in a future spouse. And I think these lists are less about what you should look for and more of the person that you should try and become. I want to become godliness so that as I'm getting ready for marriage, I can be that person for my future wife or husband. I think we spend way too much time focusing on the romance story, focusing on these things, and we ought not to leave godliness aside. We ought to pursue this for all we're worth, because if you want to get ready and have a good marriage, being a godly person and marrying a godly person is the secret. Right, Mike? There we go. So I'm going to leave you guys, it's 10:15, I'm going to leave you guys with this quote to end off our time. It is through our pursuit of godliness and being Spirit-led that we will both get ourselves ready for marriage and continue walking faithfully in our marriages. So I want to bless you guys. I hope and pray that Cornerstone, that our church is one that pursues good marriages, pursues God in the center of it, and I just want to pray a prayer blessing over you guys. Father, I just thank you for this time together. Lord, I just pray that any words I said that were maybe foolish would just wash away, Lord. But Lord, I just pray that, Lord, if there are words that are stirring in our hearts this morning, for ways that we can just love our spouses in a better way, Lord, I just pray that you would just help those to turn into action, that we would actually do something about that conviction, and that's the Holy Spirit turning in our hearts. And for those of us that are looking forward to being married one day, Lord, I just pray that your blessing would be on us to just pursue godliness for all we're worth. Lord, just to, and look for other people that are pursuing you. Lord, I pray your blessing on all the marriages here in this church. In Jesus' name, amen.